to Be Growth Driven, your place for exclusive insights from leading entrepreneurs. It's designed to help you with your personal professional growth. And today I'm very privileged to be with a good new dear friend, Jim Keys. He is the chairman of Key Development, the founder of Education is Freedom. In fact, he's got a new book here, Education is Freedom, which we'll talk about, and a little bit about his background. Former CEO of 7-Eleven and Blockbuster, of course, best-selling author with Education is Freedom. And right now he's going around the world spreading the message about his book and many other things. Jim, welcome to Be Growth Driven.
Great to be with you.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit. I gave you kind of an intro. Tell us a little bit about who Jim is, who James Keys is.
Yeah, come on. I think you had 3 pages worth of stuff. You gave me a abridged version. I was all settled in waiting for that to take about 20 minutes to introduce me.
Oh man. Okay. Sorry. I'll let you know. I mean, I got more here. I usually, you're kind of a big deal. You're involved in a lot of stuff, and have been involved in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I literally lead a blessed life because I've been a huge range of both professional and philanthropic and just stuff. I mean, I get to do some pretty cool things in aerospace and rockets and airplanes and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, it's I wouldn't want you to have to go through all the details of the bio because it does get a little bit boring. But
there's a place to read that, right?
Yeah. Okay. My website. You go to my website. Yeah.
Fantastic. Why don't we start real simple? Because we're going to talk about education here.
Sure.
And education, I would imagine, was the pivotal point of where you are at today. Because a lot of people, they want to see, how did somebody get where they're at? And a lot of times, what people are after is like, well, what's that journey like? For any entrepreneur, there's always a journey, and people look from the outside in and they see, hey, these wonderful, great things. I mean, you got planes. You and I are both pilots. You got some amazing planes. And people look from the outside in and they see all of these things, but they don't always understand what it took to get there.
Right. I've got a pretty simple formula, Joel, that might surprise everybody because, yeah, you're right. The bio, it would be easier to write what I don't do than what I do, because it would take much less space. And it really comes down to one simple formula. I have a secret. I've learned how to learn. So I can do anything. And I do about anything, only because, not that I'm, better, smarter, any of that stuff. I just have cracked the code on how to learn to do things. And learning to learn gives you massive opportunity to make every day a new adventure because there's always something new to learn and always something new to do.
I think that's a key thing. I mean, what would be the elements of that learning to learn? I mean, that sounds so simple, but it's probably not.
It is. And all you have to do is just go to Amazon, buy this book, because in the book, and I'm serious. I'm actually serious. Yeah. In the book, I've captured 3 things: what to learn, how to learn, and why to learn. And I truly do apply those things to virtually everything I do.
I like that. I've always, because just thinking about what you're sharing right here, I always, in my history, I've always had that mindset that someone else, maybe not as bright as me, probably invented this. And if they could figure it out, it's just a matter of me finding the right questions.
Yeah, you're right. It's true. Most things are not that complex. I mean, you think about something like you just said, gee, I could have figured that out. Facebook, we used to call, literally in college and in grad school, we used to call it the Facebook. We had a couple other names for it because it's what guys used to figure out who the cute girls in the class were, right?
Right.
And it was there, and so Mark Zuckerberg and a couple other guys just said, let's just do it online, and that was kind of like a yeah, of course,
right.
but they actually did it, and And so this is what happens. I think, very often we look at things and say, oh, it'd be way too complicated to build Facebook from scratch. No, it's not. It was in hard copy at one point in almost every university across the country. And somebody just had the foresight to say, let's go online with it.
Do you think yeah, so number one, like taking the imagination or taking the complexity out of it and just
Excuse me.
oh
Sorry.
bless you. Taking
Dying. Yeah. Too
taking the
much coffee.
complexity out of it and just saying, hey, this is possible, right? And what would be a next critical thing? I think of action next. Like sometimes I think that people think way too much and discuss way too much how complicated something's going to be.
They do. They do.
Besides getting to
So,
the first version.
so I mentioned three things. I mentioned the what to learn, how to learn, and why. So I'll give you the what to learn in order to be able to do all these things. Comes down to three things. It's dealing with change, because change equals opportunity. It creates opportunity. The internet came along and everybody said, oh, geez, wow, this is great. We can use it for porn. Well, there were a few other things besides porn that the internet was
Right.
good for, right? But most people just couldn't wrap their head around, what do I do with this new tool? Same thing is going on with AI right now, right? Change creates opportunity. But in order to take advantage of that opportunity that arises from change, you have to have some confidence. You have to be able to say,
Right.
I got this, I can do this. And you have to defeat that little man on your shoulder that's saying, no, who do you think you are? You're not Mark Zuckerberg. You can't create the next Facebook. Yeah, you can. But you have to believe in yourself. You have to have the confidence to do it, right? And then the third is clarity, or simplicity, to be able to have a vision and to be able to put it into simple enough terms that people can execute it for you. Because too often what we do is we've got this grand plan and we complicate the hell out of it. And then even if it is a good idea, nobody can execute it. And so we fail, right?
It can't scale, right?
It can't scale, yeah. So those are the three very, very simple things. Change, dealing with it because it's going to happen and it creates opportunity. Confidence to do something about it. And the clarity to be able to both listen, because you can't embrace change unless you listen to those who will be affected by it, your customers, your employees, etc. And so it's change. It's being able to deal with clarity, both inbound listening and outbound communicating.
Yeah.
Pretty simple, right?
No, it is, because I mean that essentially, like, it breaks down limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Right. Because I know I was raised in a just the growing up, like, oh no, that's for somebody else. I'm like, well, why?
Exactly right. Exactly.
Why does that have to be for somebody else? Why can't I do that?
Yeah.
And I think I've always noticed too, it's like, I think what we lose a lot of times as adults is we lose the curiosity and persistence that children have. Because you watch, we were at when we were last in Dallas, I was just watching this one kid running around the store. It's just the persistence they were asking from their parents, and just the curiosity they had at the same time. We start to lose that as adults, and we wonder why we're missing opportunities.
So you just described the how to learn in my book. Literally, I gave you the what, and then you just described the how. And the how is also three things. It's curiosity, which is basically from the time we were born. Our curiosity is what propelled our knowledge, because we were curious about things, and we touched the stove, realized it was hot, and said, "Oh, won't do that again," right?
Yeah.
And so curiosity is the first. Critical thinking, asking why. Kids are genius at critical thinking. Why? And then we tell them to shut up so many times they stop asking why. But that critical thinking element, that Socratic method, back and forth, let me understand, let me challenge your assumptions, let's talk about it. That's an essential component of learning. And then so creativity, curiosity, critical thinking. And then the third, which is also an essential element of how to learn is creativity. Um, Einstein called creativity, I love this. Creativity is intelligence having fun.
I like that.
How true is that, right?
Right.
Because I'll give you an example. I play music. I'm not a good musician. I didn't learn to play the piano. I play the piano to learn.
Nice. Okay.
There's a big difference because I have fun playing the piano. And in the process of having fun, I'm learning. It's
Right.
intelligence having fun.
Right. That's it's kind of like going from to book smart to, because you could read all the lessons and say, learn about all those things and never touch a key.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of going from book smart to actual experience smart, right? And then you start to learn new things.
Yeah.
Um, Not to say that the book smart is really critical because it lays foundational pieces, but the action part there, yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. So
I have friends who are classically trained musicians who never touch an instrument again for the rest of their life.
mm,
Because what happens is they're so trained on the technical aspects of the instrument that they're not freeing themselves to truly be creative.
right,
And as a result, they're never really satisfied sitting down at an instrument, at a piano, and playing because they're not technically proficient any longer. So they just don't play. Well, that's just a waste. It's just and then they stop learning at some point. So it's such those three things I characterize as the how to learn, because once you've mastered igniting your curiosity from the time you were a child that you naturally have, but you have to reignite it sometimes as an adult. And then once you've ignited your curiosity, having the element of critical thinking to really challenge assumptions and go back and forth and learn more, to have that thirst for knowledge. And then finally, the creative element of it, doesn't matter what you're doing, you can bring creativity to it and make learning fun. And so those three things I think are essential elements to how to learn. And once you've mastered them,
mm.
you learn anything.
We'll leave the third one for people to read the book. So we actually we gave them a sneak peek of like the first and second, big ones there. So we'll leave the rest for the book. I mean, and how you got Jim, how you got from where you started to here? Like, what was when you started your first business? What was the motive behind it? What pushed you to start your first business? What was the big drive?
I wish I could say that I was a classic entrepreneur who had this brilliant vision, and I said, well, let me go create this business. And no, I'm not a Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not a Steve Jobs. I'm not uh, an Elon Musk who had these brilliant ideas and went out and developed them. I was a more typical corporate guy. I did the formal education thing to get as much breadth of knowledge as I could, partly because I didn't really know what I wanted to do growing up. And I think a lot of kids are like me. I don't know what
Yeah.
to do. And so, yeah, so I went the corporate route, a much more structured approach. I still saw myself as an entrepreneur, but it wasn't a free range entrepreneur, out
Right.
there doing wild and crazy things. I was trying to be entrepreneurial within a corporate environment. It's a little different.
So how did now for a lot of people, like that corporate environment is a difficult one to navigate. Like
It is.
what were some of the things that you found early on that were helped you be successful at that? And what were some of the things you learned like that was a mistake?
Yeah, probably the most important thing in navigating that corporate environment were those three things that I shared with you, because um, people in corporations are risk averse, change averse.
Yeah.
They hate change, right?
Right.
Company is big, fat, cumbersome, bloated, blah, 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 moving down the path. Oh man, change? I don't care if
Yeah.
somebody has to change their office, or, you change the holiday schedule or something. It's just, ooh, change. That's terrible.
Right.
But the irony is that commerce starts and finishes with change.
Right.
Something changed and somebody came in and had a solution for it. So it is so inconsistent, but it's so real that the bigger the company, the more change resistant they are. And so individuals within that company end up being resistant to change too. I found through my career that being an entrepreneur in a corporate environment meant I had to embrace change when my peers didn't. Now, it didn't make me the most popular guy in the world.
Right.
And so, therefore, I had to have confidence too. And the confidence came from if I'm doing my homework and I'm doing the right things and I use data to make informed decisions and they fire me, so be it. I'm in the wrong place.
Right.
So that confidence helped to propel me. And then the third thing in a corporation, you find the complexity is just mind numbing because everyone overcomplicates the heck out of everything. And the bigger the corporation, the more complex things get. So I had an advantage, I think, in my career because maybe it's because I'm not that smart. I had to break things into simple terms so I could understand it. But then I was able to explain things better as well. And that simplicity kept me out of trouble when I was chief financial officer at 7-Eleven. It was during the Enron days.
Oh man, yeah.
Classic example. I had all these financial experts coming to me with offshore tax shelters, blah, 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 just all this manipulation of, things to pay less tax and to free up cash and all this stuff. And I couldn't understand them. And I remember telling these third party investment bankers, lawyers, if I can't understand it well enough to explain it to my board, I have no business doing it. And their response, you got to trust us. We're the experts. Thank goodness I did. Yeah, exactly. But that the essence of clarity, simplicity is so critically important in any role because as Einstein said, also he had some real gems. If you can't explain something enough to well enough to a 6-year-old so that they can understand it, you probably don't understand it yourself.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. And I was thinking, like, we look at today's world economy, like, and not just the world economy, but just, even the economy. You're over in Europe right now. But it's like you look at what's going on in the United States even too. I think what a lot of business owners and businesses gravitate towards is that complexity. They're like, oh, we gotta fix it. And actually what they should be doing is unraveling the complexity back down to simplicity.
Exactly.
So along that path, who would you say was probably the most inspirational individual on your path that it was somebody that lifted you up?
Today?
You could go today or you could go back in the past, because I think a lot of times we have to we recognize those on our journey as well as be the person on somebody's journey.
Sure. I've been fortunate over the years to have had some pretty good mentors, and mentors come in both directions. They can be positive mentors that teach you really good things. I've had some negative mentors, some people that were so bad that I wanted to make sure I wasn't like that and I didn't make those mistakes, right? But you can learn from both. I mean, mentorship comes in both forms. I'd say one of the best I had was the former chairman of 7-Eleven. We were in a Chapter 11 situation at the time, and a lot of people had their head down. They were ready to leave, quit the company. They thought 7-Eleven, many people thought 7-Eleven was going to go away. People were saying convenience is not relevant. Convenience stores are not relevant anymore. Gas, grocery stores are open 24 hours a day. Drugstores are open 20. Who needs a convenience store? And The chairman of the company at the time told me the story about his dad, and his dad had started 7-Eleven, 1927, and he had built a company called the Southland Ice Company, and they sold big blocks of ice to people for their ice box. And he said in 1928, somebody came along and invented something called the Frigidaire, right?
Right.
What does that do to your business when you sell blocks of ice for an ice box?
Right.
So his message was that he started talking to customers, and it was the customers that told his uncle on the dock. His customers said, "We don't come here for the ice. We come here for the convenience of buying ice, because where else are we going to get it? So sell us other things that we need conveniently for our new ice box, our new Frigidaire." And literally, they started carrying other things. And that's how the convenience store concept was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it kind of comes back down to, well, that again, simplicity.
It
Like,
is.
you got to listen and have simplicity behind how you solve the problems. And I mean, I remember growing up, hitting the 7-Eleven every time I walked home from school. That was where you got your, for kids after school, that was where you got your Slurpee and your treats,
Exactly.
all that good stuff.
Simplicity of Slurpee dispensing.
Right. I love it. See, I always find it inspirational when you think about how some of the big, the big change, like 7-Eleven, how they got their start, how they evolved over time. And it is just, to me, it strikes as, again, continuous action and small changes.
Yeah.
And take bold moves
And
be willing.
Keeping up with change, because change is the only inevitable. It's going to happen.
Right.
Tomorrow, there'll be something that happens tomorrow that will make your needs different.
And I already think I know the answer. I mean, that keeping up with change, that really essentially makes you individually recession proof, you could say.
Well, yeah, that was his advice. Actually, was businesses will come and go, economies will come and go, weather will be good and bad. The one consistent need of consumers is convenience.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's good weather or bad weather. Your job is to find ways that you satisfy that convenience need in either good weather or bad weather, good economy or bad. And he was right. He was really right.
I've seen that consistent, as I worked with businesses for the last, 26 plus years, and every business I've ever talked to that said, "Hey, we're just trying to keep things steady."
Yeah.
Right. They go out of business in the next 6 months to 12 months.
Yeah.
And so that's really that change component is such a critical one. And the same thing, like I remember listening to somebody, and they were talking about, for example, even in things like relationships, even like in marriage, like you should want to change.
Yeah.
Like,
true.
we always hear that statement, "Oh, I love you the way you are." And I liked what this person said. They're like, "No, you should never love me the way I am.
Yeah.
You should always demand that I'm changing, for the better." And that's just how important it is. And that's how new things get opened up, and, a new light comes on things there.
Sure.
So I love that.
You want a great example? I use this particularly when talking to retailers or to young people about the retailing industry. Great example of change. You're walking down the street in New York, and you see the guys selling the handbags, right? The fake handbags. And they're like, "Hey, come on over here. We got Gucci, we got Dior." They got all these fake handbags lined up, right? And they're all on like a blanket on the sidewalk. And then one drop of rain falls. What happens? Poof, the handbags disappear. They're gone.
Right.
Where'd they go?
Right.
They're all wrapped up in the blankets. Out come the umbrellas. Right?
Right.
And they go from handbag salesman to umbrella salesman, just like that. It's called real-time response to change. And to me, it's like the most pure form of retail there is. that
Right.
guy on the sidewalk selling a handbag and flipping that inventory into umbrellas when the rain falls, right? I
I
mean,
love it.
it's real, but that's it's a metaphor for virtually all business, because all business is going to encounter at some point that drop of rain, whatever it is.
Right.
And it's not literally rain, but figuratively, something is going to rain on that business. And what are they going to pivot to?
Right. And I think it's critical too, like that attitude that you have at that moment as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So it's like, I remember when COVID hit, when it first came out, you know, I told my team, I'm like, this is fantastic. Not because people are getting sick. That's not,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, but the point being is that like, hey, this is going to create change. This is going to create this is going to break things. It's going to cause innovation. It's like, this is an opportunity to ride something.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Even so, and I think the attitude that you take on even sad things like that, um, impact, just kind of, we look at all different types of things that business owners go through, entrepreneurs go through. Go ahead.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It has nothing to do with the change, because change is going to happen. That's the only consistent, whatever it is, pandemic, rain, blah, blah, blah. Change
Right.
is going to happen. It's your response to change. It's your attitude that will separate winners from losers.
Right.
Because, I mean, I love to use the example. Somebody's sitting around in a cave and they hit a little flint rock or something. Poof, a fire is started, right? Well, the
Right.
guy's wife probably said, "Put that thing out. You're going to burn down you're going to burn down the cave." And then somebody else said, "No, no, look at this. We're going to harness this. We're going to make money on this," right? So it's how you respond to that change that makes all the difference in the world.
Right. How do you think? What do you think prohibits a lot of entrepreneurs from adapting to that? Like, what do you think is the
Fear,
big roadblock, the mental roadblock? How can they identify it and get rid of it?
fear, 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 fear. It's the biggest killer of careers, of corporations, of societies.
Yeah.
Think about whole societies that have imploded because they gave in to fear, and they
Right.
just collapsed within themselves. I mean, it's a little of that going on right now in our
Right.
world. I mean, turn on the news, all you hear is fear.
Right.
And
Well, and
it
what you're worried about what's going to happen, and it doesn't even
yeah,
happen.
and it doesn't happen. And
Yeah.
and and we're worried about stuff that really at the end of the day doesn't really affect us
Right.
directly. But we
Right.
get all wrapped around the axle and worry. And so I mean, that's just on a grand scale, it is the biggest derailer of individuals and careers, whether it's the little person on your shoulder that's telling you you're not good enough or smart enough, that insecurity crap that happens to us from may have been something that you got yelled at for as a little kid and you're still carrying it 40 years later, an insecurity that maybe I can't do this. And that's just baloney.
Right.
But it's there and it's real. Or it may be the outside world, because of jealousy, you're working too hard. You're making me look bad because you're smarter than me. And that fear then has an effect on you. So there's all these negative forces coming at you from either inside or outside, and you got to defeat them, because that fear is the killer.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of people, they get stuck in the moment, right? They get frozen. It's kind of like the deer in the headlight moment. They're like, oh
Exactly.
my goodness, I'm not gonna be successful.
Yeah.
I think time's probably the biggest killer there, because they let more time happen on it. You know what I'm saying? And it's just, I like the statement along the lines of like, there's no time like the present. That means now, you
Yeah.
know? And so it's like, get at it. The more you're afraid of something, attack it quicker,
Yeah.
kind of a mentality.
Well, there's others. I mean, I use a Mandela quote. I never lose. I win or I learn. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you have? What do you have really to lose most of the time? Money, make more.
Yeah.
Pride, get over it,
And money's just made up anyway, right? They
Yeah.
make more of it. And
Yeah.
well, it's, you know, I've always thought too, it's like, you're never cashed out until you decide you're cashed out.
Yeah. True.
So, unless you do something that puts you in prison, and even then you could probably make a nice business.
Yeah.
But not that I'm endorsing that, but you're not out until you choose you're out. Jim, I appreciate, I mean, you shared a lot of stuff that basically, again, boils things down simply for, along your journey, just the mindset. And I think, there's one of the critical things for any entrepreneur, anybody in corporate America, anybody starting a business, is mindset is critical, and how you attack things is critical, and how you think about, the think about things, the approach for simplicity. What would you say, along your journey has been, your most recent journey? What's been the most instrumental impact to where you're at right now? You're on a tour for your Education is Freedom book. You're doing some big things philanthropically, trying to help people to get education. Like, what got you to what made you go down this vein?
I think the element that I've been exercising most, let's say, of all of the things that I try to practice is the thing that I call character. And it's the way I would describe it is, I mean, we all know what character is, but your integrity, your humility, your gratitude, your compassion for others, all that stuff wrapped in. That's a big part of what motivates me today, because I can go make a lot more money and I can create more business. But the feeling that you can actually do something to change the world is an important element. So I do think that's a big part of what drives me today, is this idea that I really do have a voice that can help contribute to the world being a better place. But I'll share with you, you didn't really ask that question. It was a little kind of a two-part question, I think, which is, what is it that I'm doing out there? Well, I'm expanding what I would characterize as my brand, right?
Right.
And what is your brand? It's that thing that you don't really see. Like, you don't have Coca-Cola written across your chest.
Right. Yeah.
But it's the same thing as Coke versus Pepsi versus RC versus an unbranded cola.
Yeah.
So when I'm out there speaking, I have to hopefully communicate to people what my brand is, and what hopefully they will see and feel is that level of integrity and humility and gratitude that I have inside. So even though it's not a visible brand, right, it's still there. Each of us carries around our own brand. So I'm trying to use that brand, which is hopefully a good brand, to help create positive influence, change lives in a positive way, inspire people, hopefully, in a positive way that makes them want to use knowledge to eliminate fear.
I love that. And I think that's really, if we were to fast forward to, I was visiting with some friends, and he was sharing that he went and bought his tombstone, and what he wanted to, and he wrote what he wanted to have written on his tombstone.
Wow.
And he's nowhere close to dying, but his thought process was, well, if I'm trying to create my life.
Yeah.
So I figured I'd start at the end. What's on my tombstone?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't, along with what you're talking about, character and your brand.
Yeah.
What's that final moment that everybody will know you for?
Yeah.
what impact did you leave? What mark did you leave in a good way or a bad way?
Yep.
So that kind of reminded me of that.
There's a little of that, and there's also just the idea that we can all make the world a better place. And especially now, the reason I think this message is so important is that the world is now obsessed with fear. And it's not just the United States, every country. I'm here in England. When I was in Australia, they have same issues, different problems. So same division, polarized society, but different issues that they're fighting about. And when I have the discussions with individuals in England, individuals in Australia, individuals in France, it's the same thing. It's a fear that someone's going to take something from us, do something to us, harm us in some way, get something we aren't going to get. And much of it is based on the lack of knowledge about what's really going on and a misunderstanding about what's really happening and how big that threat is. So I've actually been using a Star Wars quote when I talk about it. I talk about Yoda.
Right. Okay. I got to hear this.
So Yoda was teaching Luke about the Force, and he said, Luke, he said, fear leads to anger. Anger leads to violence. And violence leads to more ignorance, which leads to fear. So ignorance is really the root cause of fear, most fear. And it's the root cause of most violence and anger. And so it's this negative cycle that we get ourselves into as a society and as individuals. So his point to young Luke was, you must reverse that cycle and reverse the ignorance with knowledge and create, instead of fear, create understanding, which leads to hope, which leads to peace.
Right.
And I mean, if you think about it, it's as simple as when you're a kid and you're afraid of the dark. And mom comes in and turns on the light. And you realize, oh, there's no monster under the bed. He's in the closet. And she opens the closet. No monster in the closet. Okay, I can go back to sleep now. And ironically, it's as simple as that in many, many ways, that if we can just replace that fear with knowledge and understanding, if we can turn the light on, which is what knowledge is, then most of these issues that we deal with personally and in our corporations and in our society, we can solve these. They're not unsolvable. They're not really things we perhaps have to fear about if we can just get together and use knowledge to create solutions.
Right. And have that communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I like the monster under the bed. I always taught my kids I was the boogeyman. So, I'm like, if you're not afraid of me, then there's no boogeyman.
Yeah, exactly.
It's real simple. I remember my son when he was like 3 years old, and he had a couple other boys were going to stay, and they were scared of monsters. And he goes, no, it's okay. That's my dad. And so, so is it taken away? But that the simple point of it is sometimes when we realize the things that aren't there that were delaying us, it's just it opens up, it removes the ignorance.
You do realize that 30 years from now, somebody's going to make a lot of money. Some therapist going to be sitting there making a lot of money. My dad told me he was a boogeyman.
Yeah, I figured, but that's part of being a dad, right? I mean, you get to leave that mark on them,
Yeah, it's great. It's great. You're contributing to the future therapist of America.
Hey, trying to keep the economy going. That's that therapist will need to get some convenient items at 7-Eleven.
Yeah, that's right. It'll all help. It'll all help.
Right. No, I
Actually, you
love
are
that.
right though. You're absolutely right though. I mean, if you can take away that fear, and I wish everybody. I get asked the question a lot. What would you tell yourself as a young person, a young man
Right.
growing up? I'd be like, chill, dude. What the hell are you afraid of? Because I
Yeah.
was always wrapped up in fear of I'm not going to be good enough, smart enough, I'm not going to make it to this level, and it's just such a waste of time.
Right. No, I love that. Yeah. So what would you tell your younger self? You kind of tiptoed into it, but I mean,
Yeah, don't be afraid. Be afraid of nothing. There's nothing to fear because you can learn to solve any problem.
yeah.
And the worst, the most soul crushing, devastating crisis that could happen. I mean, I lost parents, one and then another, and I lost a home. I had a house condemned. None of that stuff mattered. I mean, yes,
Right.
losing a parent matters, but you learn from it and you get past it and you learn to cherish the time that you did have with that loved one
Mm.
before they passed. And you maybe even love them more than you would have if they were still around and you'd be taking them for granted.
Right.
So there's an ability to withstand any change that happens in any crisis. But again, it all comes back to how do we respond to it? Do we put our head down to go
Right.
into severe depression and then affect everybody around us? Or do we keep our head up and say, yes, am I sad? Absolutely. But will I get through this? Yes, I will.
Right. Well, and the reality is it takes experiences for us to learn that.
Yeah.
Hopefully though, we learn that much quicker in the process than later, and are able to take advantage of the time because that's that time, time we just can't get that time back. Um, so we definitely got to take advantage of it. What is
Exactly.
I got a final question for you, kind of in harmony
Yeah.
with the podcast name, Be Growth Driven. What does being growth driven mean to you?
Being growth driven,
Yeah.
constant lifelong learning. It's how you grow.
Right. I love it. Right in harmony with your book.
Yeah. No,
It gives you freedom,
it
right?
is. It could be you know, too many donuts too. That is also a growth factor, but uh, I I prefer the other kind, the learning growth. But
Right. Right. No, I love it. Constant learning. So
yeah,
everyone, thank you for jumping on Be Growth Driven. Jim, thank you so much for being here, making time out of your busy schedule as you're traveling the globe, and sharing with everyone what you've learned. I mean, you've truly achieved some remarkable things. If you don't know who Jim Keys is, you need to go research who Jim Keys. In fact, wherever we have this posted, we'll have a link to the correct biography, and that way you can read up on him, see what he's doing, see the amazing things that he's a part of, and what he's already done. And frankly, I mean, you're not done yet by no means.
no,
I think you're
no,
just getting
no,
started.
just getting warmed up. Yeah, we got our deal with Mr. Beast that
Right.
we're out there trying to bring scholarships to kids all over the world. So
Yeah.
yeah, lots of good things coming.
Yeah, some amazing things. So definitely make sure you're following this guy. And Jim, thank you for being on today. And until next time, be great because nothing else pays.